Every sport has controversial athletes, but when it comes to professional boxers, things can go sometimes a bit overboard. Let's check them out. Naseem Hamed. Like a lot of controversial fighters, there are people that see Hamed as a legend and others that see him as a fraud who is hungry for attention. But the truth is, these are just two extreme ends, and Hamed falls somewhere in the middle of this spectrum. The boxing star was known for his explosive punching skills. We admit that he has done things that no boxing fan had ever seen before. His unique ways actually made him become a star in the boxing world during the 1990s. Hamed held many featherweight titles and won countless fights. Fans thought he was amazing up until he decided to move up a notch in his career and fight elite boxers. So he went head-to-head with Marco Antonio Barrera, who literally exposed Hamed's fighting skills. Not only did Hamed lose the fight, but his skills were clearly no match for Barrera. This left boxing enthusiasts shocked that Hamed was clearly scamming fans by picking weak fighters to fight so he could appear more superior. But all that ended when he came face-to-face with the elite, which also crushed Hamed's career. The boxer never recovered in the sport again. Mike Tyson. These last years, Tyson has given us the impression that he is just relaxing and enjoying his days with all that money he made from his fighting days. However, Tyson does work momentarily, managing his own promotional company. During the time when he was still fighting his opponents, he appeared a bit scarier than other fighters of the time. He first made international headlines in boxing as a teen when he had just made it out of juvenile detention. But when he reached global fame in his early 20s, Tyson's career started declining. This is after he was involved in a huge scandal that made his fans and pretty much the whole world turn against him. Just a couple weeks after he had been defeated by Buster Douglas, Tyson got arrested for allegedly forcing a woman into sleeping with him. After reportedly being proven guilty, he ended up in jail for 3 years. He did make a comeback after his release, but he was never seen the same way by fans again, failing to leave the impact that he once did in boxing. Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali is the most adored and inspirational boxer in the world, but since he lived in an era where African Americans and people of color were left out from society in America, he became part of some social controversies. During a time he became a reputable boxer, Ali did everything in his power to refuse the United States government drafting him into a war he morally was against happening. For this, America stripped him from his boxing title and banned him from fighting. Of course, he was rebellious and continued the sport, something that nearly sent him to prison and opened problems with him in the Supreme Court. All this because he was against the Vietnam War from progressing. By this rebellious act, Ali not only transcended boxing, but also left an impact all across America. Floyd Mayweather. It was expected that Mayweather would make it onto our list at some point. He is a master in marketing his boxing persona so that all people around the world would be willing to pay anything just to see him fight. This has made Mayweather one of the richest boxers in the world and in the history of boxing. But this hasn't kept his career away from controversy. In 2012, he got arrested and spent some months in prison after being proven guilty of domestic assault. Another scandal Mayweather has been a part of is being involved in the attempted kidnapping of 2 of his employees that allegedly tried to steal from Mayweather. However, this second scandal didn't send the wealthy boxer to jail as the case didn't have enough evidence to continue and ran cold. Ricardo Mayorga. Considered the craziest man in boxing, Mayorga gained a reputation by insulting his opponents and in the most creative ways. He was one unique character in the boxing world where standing out is important for your career to take off. One of Mayorga's most controversial moments was when he was in a press conference with his soon-to-be opponent Fernando Vargas. The only thing that separated the two boxers at that moment was a plexiglass barrier. Mayorga shouted at Vargas that he was the fat girl that he was going to beat up. Mayorga then ran his mouth even more when he told Vargas that he will turn all of Mexico against him. But what doesn't make sense is that he publicly apologized to Vargas for what he said after defeating him. Ike Abiabuchi. The fact that Abiabuchi's career ended before it could even start was controversial enough. The story has it that his life went spiraling out of control with reports saying he ended up in violent insanity before it started affecting his career. This was also the reason his career soon came crashing down rapidly. Abiabuchi had potential, and there was a lot of money to be made off of such a professional boxer. It really is devastating that the boxing promoters were marketing him up to his bitter end. Although Abiabuchi was clearly mentally unstable, fans were curious to see where he would end up and what he would do in front of the cameras, treating him more like a freak show than a boxer. Promoters didn't care when he kidnapped his girlfriend's son for no reason, as they were still trying hard to get him linked to other fights. However, his career finally came to a sealed end when he assaulted a woman in a hotel while he was visiting Las Vegas. After that, he was sent to prison. Abiabuchi was still impressive for all that he did, ending his career with a clean 20-0 record with 15 knockouts. Primo Carnera. Now, Carnera isn't exactly a modern-day boxer, but he sure deserves a mention as one of the most controversial fighters in history. Carnera was a giant compared to the average human and was often considered a freak during the beginning of his boxing career. He literally shocked the whole world when he knocked out world heavyweight boxing champion Jack Sharkey in 1933. This almost never happens in the boxing world, a boxing star being knocked out by a rising boxer, but this fight is still debated to this day. It is reported that Sharkey's corner complained of a loaded glove after their man was counted out in the 6th round, even after being way ahead on the cards. Although there is not a lot of evidence nowadays to back this claim up, there are things that don't really add up, like the defeats Carnera later got from his 2 upcoming fights with Max Baer and Joe Louis. Many believe that Carnera was manipulated by other handlers to take down Sharkey. Abe Attell. Attell is one of the greatest boxers in history, and unlike Carnera, there is no controversy about him being one of the best. Attell made a name for himself during the 20th century in San Francisco, at a time where boxing was a highly popular sport and competition was high between boxers. Growing up Jewish in an Irish neighborhood in California, no one even considered that Attell would become a notorious boxer in the following years. He managed to become dominant in the sport, defeating over 50 opponents throughout his entire boxing career. But in 1919, Attell became part of the biggest boxing scandal in history when he involved himself with organized crime boss Arnold Rothstein. We can kind of guess what happened after that. Attell was accused of throwing the World Series to the Cincinnati Reds. Now, even though laws back then were weak and the investigation failed to go even further, Attell was still perceived differently by fans, eventually making his career decline. Jake LaMotta. LaMotta is known for being Sugar Ray Robinson's hardest opponent to defeat. LaMotta was considered one of the most stubborn and ruthless boxers of his time. Sadly, he ruined his career while he had reached his peak. He became part of one of the most famous boxing scandals after he dropped a round 4 TKO to Billy Fox. Just a few days after the fight, rumors were already spreading that the whole match was set up illegally. This was after Billy Fox wasn't revealing any of his usual skills during the match. Plus, Fox also lost by stoppage, which was the first time he lost in such a way during his entire career. After a few years passed, LaMotta opened up about what truly happened during the fight, saying that he threw the fight to a Senate inquiry. When asked why he did such a thing, he said that he just wanted to be great at a world title in boxing later in his career. At the time when LaMotta was boxing, the mafia controlling the boxing world had reached its peak, making it easier for fighters to play a fixed match. LaMotta's career was a roller coaster ride full of riotous events. His life story was later made into a movie starring Robert De Niro, which later became considered the best boxing movie to ever be made. Which of these boxers didn't you expect to be on our list? Let us know in the comments and check out our next video.